At least that's what I thought.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. It's really, yeah, something. So Preston, can you share like what is bullying to you, and if you can give an example if you're comfortable? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, gosh, where to even start? You know, it's I think one of the things that one of the things that a lot of people who aren't oppressed or aren't multiply marginalized in the kink community don't realize is that we experience trauma, racism, transphobia, ableism, misogyny, misogynoir, anti-Blackness. We experience it constantly. There is absolutely no break from experiencing it. And I can definitely share a couple of examples of things that have happened that a lot of people don't even, you know, really kind of recognize just the impact that these sorts of, you know, things happen, you know, that these sorts of things have on you, right? Like Shadi mentioned a consent violation. I've had my consent violated so many times as well. For example, at my home bar, the Providence Eagle, great place. You know, love everyone there who's on a staff. But there was a elderly, you know, cis white leatherman who saw that I was wearing rubber with a codpiece on, took his hand while I was waiting for my drink, which was at the time a vodka pineapple, because I'm always a vodka pineapple kind of girl, and grabbed my codpiece and said, "Oh, I just wanted to check if the stereotype was true." So you have multiple dimensions of dehumanization going on here. Somebody who thinks they're entitled to your body, that they can objectify you, that they can dehumanize you. And they've got this assumption in their minds as well about your entire cohort of people who you are associated with. It's extremely dehumanizing. And this has happened to me many times at events. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize, and this is something I found really funny with the Stop Asian Hate hashtag campaign recently, is that people were saying, "Oh, I can't believe all," you know, white people especially in the kink community were saying, "Oh, I can't believe all these hate crimes are happening against, you know, people who are Asian." And it was kind of one of those things where it was like they reacted the same way to, you know, Black Lives Matter or Black Trans Lives Matter. It's this complete narrow tunnel vision where they can't understand that these hate crimes, these transphobic hate crimes, these anti-Asian hate crimes, these misogynistic hate crimes, these ableist hate crimes are happening at kink events in the very spaces where these people do not think they are happening. One example was my very first MAL in Washington, D.C. I was there for my very first time. I was wearing rubber. I was in the elevator going up to the atrium where you can see everybody with their curtains open and having a good time. Of course, you know, having a good time is something that isn't really something that we can access in the first place. And I still remember this was just after the election of Donald Trump. I was going up in the elevator stopped. I was the only one who was of color, by the way, in the entire elevator. It was all cis white men wearing leather harnesses. And we got to like the 5th floor or something, you know, some people got out, some people got on, and suddenly this extremely drunk white dude gets all up in my business, says, "Oh, you know, now that Trump's president, you can't be in this elevator with us." Shoves me out the elevator, I fall to the ground. And it actually took me many years to recognize that that was a crime. That was assault. That was a hate crime. And nobody in the elevator did anything. Nobody in the elevator reacted. Nobody in the elevator did anything to help or react in any way or call somebody or do anything. And I realized this is what is normal, tolerated behavior at these kink events. One other example I'll give is, you know, Folsom Europe. I had people come over and tell me that with my Mr. International rubber sash, they came over and told me, "You can't be wearing that sash," implying that Mr. International rubber and title holders should only be of white descent. And they said, "No, you stop calling yourself Mr. International rubber. You're Mr. China rubber. You're Mr. Japan rubber." And this was this happened many times when I was in Europe during my travels. And what a lot of people don't realize is that this affects you so deeply. It really kind of gets to your core, and it really kind of, you know, just it's like somebody stabbing you with a knife and turning the knife, you know. And this is happening to us constantly, you know. It's not something that, you know, and to go back to what Shadi was saying, right? When we call this behavior out, when we speak our truth, right? When we speak truth to power and we share our stories, we get gaslit, we get canceled, we get erased, we get silenced. People deny that these things happen to us, even though these are things that literally have traumatized us for years. I spent a year away from the kink community, for example, because of the trauma that I had happen to me. And because of the fact that when I called out this behavior at Folsom Europe, people said I was being racist against white people and tried to come at me and cancel me, and went on this hate mail and death threat campaign that was nothing less than literally the most white supremacist bullying and harassment that you could possibly experience. And I want to go back to what Alexandra said earlier that I think was really resonant, which is that a lot of these people who don't recognize their own privilege, who think that being called racist is worse than anything, you know, that is the racism that they themselves inflict on other people, which is just the hypocrisy of it all, and the fact that they cannot see that the homophobia or queer phobia that they experience is nowhere near the intersecting oppressions that we experience as people of color, as trans folks, as women, as femmes. This is not something that they can possibly ever begin to understand. And I think a lot of it comes from not only a position of white supremacy, which we've already talked about, but it also comes from a deep, deep, deep seated position of insecurity, of narcissism, of selfishness, rooted in this white supremacy that manifests in us getting canceled and us getting gaslit and us getting silenced. Because just to quote what Alexandra said at a panel that I had the privilege of attending last fall, you need to get out of your own way. And this is not only something that we need to hear as oppressed, multiply oppressed minorities, racialized minorities here in the kink community. It's something that these people who are complicit and actively uphold these cis heteronormative, white supremacist, patriarchal, anti-Black, racist, imperialist approaches need to recognize as well. If they don't get out of their own way as well, we will never have progress in this community in a meaningful capacity.
The other thing to add to that, that I always add, because I do tell people a lot of times, get out of your own way. I will not willingly participate in my own oppression. I am also not here to play the oppression Olympics with you, because I will tell you, if you want to talk about who has it worse, trust me, baby, I may come out on top. I will not participate in that. As I listen, one of the things in living my own life, and I was talking to my sister earlier, and we were just talking about like the journey to find yourself. I was lucky enough as a child to grow up with my elders. So all of my people, so to go back to sort of go to what Preston was saying, here's the thing when it comes to living a particular way, living as a person of color. As a Black person in this country, honey, if you tell me a racist incident happened, I'm just gonna look at you and say, oh, it's the same shit, different day. You know, oh, boy, that's a Tuesday. That literally is what that was Tuesday. I grew up with my elders. I grew up with the stories of my family. I grew up understanding the things that my family accomplished in this country in a short time, Black and white. My great grandmother, so one of the people that I actually do talk about in my family is white. My great grandmother was a white woman married to a Black man at the turn of the 20th century. I talk about the family members who were slaves. I talk about the family members who were free Black people. I talk about, because those people, some of those people were still alive When you can sit down at the feet of a 95-year-old Black woman and hear her story, and you know that her story comes out of something, you know, that's why I look at it and I always say I'm blessed because I can stand on the shoulders of my ancestors, and I can stand there and I can stand in those stories and I can stand in that power. That's why I'm willing to stand out in front and talk. That's why I'm willing to push back. And that's the thing that they're not expecting. Panels like this mess with people because they don't expect people to push back. I am listening to all of you talk about things like that, baby. Nobody, I take that back. I had a consent violation once. It was literally during my title year. It was in the bar here, it was in our bar here in Des Moines, and this person reached under my dress and literally was like, I want to see if you're wearing underwear. And so he reaches under my dress. I literally, okay, so you see these are real. These are not just decoration. I reached down, grabbed this person's arm and literally twisted it and had him in a headlock with his arm and wrist twisted back behind him, and literally told him, if you ever touch me again, I will rip your arm off and beat you with it. There were people who were standing near me because I did it so effortlessly. They thought it was a scene. They thought the moment was actually like us prepping to go have fun later, and it wasn't. I was so pissed off and so angry that I literally walked over to the security person. I said, this person just touched me. Get them or I'm going to beat the hell out of them. And they moved them out the way. I always say, now here's a moment in my privilege. I don't think any of you realize it. Do you all realize that you all don't let me go anywhere alone? I don't go anywhere by myself when I'm at a kink event. You all ask me where I'm going. You all meet me at my door. You all ride down in the elevator with me. I am a foot away from anybody at any given time, and you all make sure that I get back. None of the men in my life at a kink event let me do anything, because the understanding of what could possibly happen to a Black trans woman the violence is so prevalent that you all don't let me. I don't go anywhere. Like when my title year, when I went, so my contest was Will, and it was held in Dallas. My producers almost canceled the trip because there had been 6 murders of Black trans women that happened in that span of time. And they're like, no, you ain't going. But they're like, okay, if you go, you have to go, and there is no going anywhere. And to go back to a moment of bullying, I will use what happened to me at will. So, like I said, not a lot of Black trans women in leather. At the time that I won Miss Iowa Leather, I thought that I was the only Black woman who had ever won a leather title. I am Black trans woman who had ever won a leather title. I am not. I am the second. There are only 2 of us. The first person is a former winner of Miss Olympus Leather, and then there's me, and I didn't win on the big contest level. Someone decided to basically, a former Miss Mid-Atlantic Leather basically decided to, why is she talking about herself? This is supposed to be about history. There's nothing historic about her. She's just another Black tranny. Did not think that she was heard. And instantly an entire group, so the entire Black female contingent of Austin Girls of Leather, called their sirs and their sires and their doms. And next thing you know, the very next morning, there is an entire brigade of Black men and Black women walking around the host hotel for Will to make sure that I was safe.